Okay, well, welcome everybody to another edition of the Beyond Compliance webinar and podcast series. We're really excited to have you all join us again this month. This is Brian Sharp with SafetyChain Software, and thanks for carving out some time in your very busy days to join us. We're really excited to have a new topic. We're always trying to expand our approach to this and find topics that all of you are looking to hear more about. So we're going to be talking today a little bit about profitable food production, and in particular, how you can unlock the potential of your plant with technology and automation. And we'll be bringing in some of our favorite partners over at Matrix Control Systems, in particular Steve Hartley, to share a little bit of his expertise there. So with that, just a little bit of background. If you're not familiar with the series, first of all, welcome. We're excited to have you. If you're a returnee, we appreciate the continued support. As many of you know, we've been putting on educational topics for the food and beverage community really since our inception over 7 years ago, including our FSMA Fridays, which have been extremely popular. But one of the things we heard is that you wanted to hear more about what's happening in the trenches, some tactical, practical, strategic type of training that you could really apply in your businesses. And so Beyond Compliance was born. And we've been bringing in thought leaders and practitioners, consultants, folks that are out there doing this stuff. So this isn't just theory. These are people that we bring in who are actually doing these things that can really add a lot of expertise in a variety of areas. So we put these on for you. We'll keep doing them as long as you keep coming. We certainly welcome your feedback, ideas about other topics you'd like to hear, maybe even specific presenters. But we're very proud to sponsor this, put this on at no charge for our food and beverage friends. And you'll hear a lot about the strategic side of the business, and today even a little bit about the hardware side and automation. And where we complement a lot of the presenters that come in is on the software side. So we have a end-to-end solution, cloud-based solution for food quality, food safety, and supplier compliance. So as you hear about a lot of the things we are sharing in these sessions, if you're looking for a way to improve your productivity or profitability, like we're going to talk about today, or even just compliance, making it faster and easier. This is an area where we can help, and we'd certainly love an opportunity to share a lot more about what we're up to over at SafetyChain.com. A few little housekeeping items as we get started here today. So one, if you've been here in the past, hopefully you get a sense. We like to have a pretty conversational format. We don't take ourselves all that seriously, although these are pretty serious topics, but we hope you appreciate the approach. One of the things that is most important is that you get what you want out of this, and you do that by asking questions. One of the things that we do is we'll monitor the questions during the presentation, and we'll take those at the end in a little Q&A session, but we encourage you while they're on your mind or while they're to maybe something that's being shared on the screen, please don't hesitate to fire those away. You'll notice that only the panelists are displayed, so they just come to us. They're not broadcast to everybody, and we'll sift through those and do our best to get to all of them at the end of the webinar during our Q&A session. I'll get the first question out of the way that we always hear, particularly for today. In fact, I was already getting emails this morning asking this question. So yes, we are recording this session, and yes, it will be available. I will also say that Matrix and Steve and his team have been kind enough to offer sharing the entire presentation deck as well. So we'll make sure all of the resources shared today will be included in a quick follow-up in the days to come. So you can share that or watch it again or check out some of the details that are shared during the presentation. Last but not least is audio. We are on a webinar system, and stuff happens, and we all use these tools every day. So if you have any challenges, we do have my partner in crime, Ann, who is standing by to kind of watch the chat monitor. So if you have any issues, there's an option to chat us, and we can try and help you with any technical difficulties. The usual go-to move is just swap your audio from phone to computer or computer to phone, whichever you were on previously. So with that, we're going to dig into the good stuff here. And I wanted to kind of preface this topic for us. We talk a lot about food safety. We get into quality quite a bit. But one of the things that we've been hearing a lot from our customers is really talk about throughput and yield and profitability and just the the performance of their plants in general. And we have been working with Steve and his team over at Matrix Controls with some of our customers to help solve this problem and really improve what's happening on the plant floor in terms of technology and automation. And so we asked Steve to come in today and share a few nuggets that these guys see in just literally hundreds of plants every year about how do we unlock the potential of the plant with technology and automation, and how do we help use that data and technology to increase throughput and yield and ultimately profitability. So Steve, first I want to welcome you. I want to make sure you can hear me okay.
Absolutely, Brian. Can you hear me?
I can, yeah. Thanks for being here. We really appreciate it. We know this is a very busy time of year for you guys. Steve is a sales engineering consultant over at Matrix. I think just to give him the right context, as we would joke, he's not the sales guy. He's one of you, right? He's out there in the trenches. He's programming and configuring and installing these systems. So he's in plants like yours every day and understands the challenges you're facing, and does this for food manufacturing. So Steve, I think it'd be helpful if you gave a little bit of background about you guys, what you're doing, and then we'll dig into some of the content here.
For sure. Well, thanks, Brian. Thank you for inviting us. Definitely an honor and a privilege to be here. And we hope that we can live up to the standards of your webinars, given that we've seen some great information being shared in the past. So we hope we can live up to those standards. In working with SafetyChain, we love you guys' platform, we love the product, and we love working with your team. So we're really enjoying our relationship, and we're looking forward to what the future might hold for us. As you did mention, the company is Matrix Industrial Control Systems, and just to provide a bit of an overview of who we are and what we do, the tagline that we go by is to provide innovative technology solutions for the food manufacturing industry. And just digging into a little bit of those details, we are only in the food industry. We are heavily involved in the protein side of things, but we do some other different types of food manufacturing products. Historically, we've done a lot of production management solutions, so on the down in the trenches, as you talked about, where the food is being made and it's all wet and shiny equipment and loud things going on. But certainly, food safety and quality assurance are an important part of our customers' lives. So while we've worked in the food safety quality assurance side of things before, as the emphasis on that particular part of the business has grown with FSMA and the food safety requirements and compliance and regulatory compliance, this is where our partnership with SafetyChain has really helped us out and really supported us as we're able to provide that integrated technology platform. One thing that we do believe and that we do hope to express in the next hour or less is that information is king, in that putting accurate information in the hands of the right people at the right time allows them to make the best decisions and the right decisions for the organization. So that's a little bit of background on who Matrix is. You showed some of the customers that we work with. And to broadly describe who our customers are, they're the companies, the food manufacturing companies that are really taking a progressive approach to technology and finding the right places to put that technology in their facilities to drive business improvements. In describing what we do, I can isolate it into three general buckets. Certainly we talk about production management systems down on the plant floor, and on the left there we've got that shiny industrial PC with a touchscreen, and our proprietary production management platform called Data Navigator covers production processes from the receiving dock all the way through primary processing, secondary processing, out to packaging and shipping. With our partnership with SafetyChain, we're now getting a lot more involved in deeper insights into food safety and quality assurance and providing that leveraged system. And one of the big things that we see that's happening with our customers is digging into that production equipment. Lots of food manufacturing facilities are full of all sorts of different types of beautiful, wonderful equipment, but really digging into that equipment and leveraging not just the manufacturing capability, but also the data collection capabilities of those equipment is really powerful. So what I thought about when we started putting together our presentation here is why companies would want to invest in technology and automation. And typically what we find is that there's usually a mandatory requirement to invest in technology, in that there's a compliance requirement, or an end customer is providing some expectations or requirements in order to ship product to them and their facilities so they can handle it. So while a lot of these technology initiatives are driven by requirements, we find the best companies that are using technology are also tailing on business improvement. So for example, regulatory compliance is huge. Certainly food manufacturing facilities can operate if not in compliance. But if you are able to attach additional business value to that regulatory compliance, then adopting the technology and incorporating technology becomes a lot easier and a lot more supportive throughout the organization. So for example, just from a straight compliance point of view, there's lots of rules and regulations and lots of processes that need to be followed in order to have a food manufacturing facility be compliant. But if you're able to increase the quality of your food and improve the consistency of your food, then that is really a business driver that can help support that compliance requirement. Similarly, one of the common systems that many food manufacturing facilities would be a barcode labeling system. So imagine an end customer comes to a food manufacturer and says, if you want to ship to us, then you have to label your cases and your pallets with such a barcode symbology, and it's got to have the appropriate data and in such a format that we want. That might be a requirement from a customer, but if you can take that labeling system, case labeling system, and attach a scale to it and weigh those cases and capture what your throughput is and what your giveaways are and what your yields are, and really drive and tighten those types of metrics, then they can deliver significant and important value to the business that can help support that requirement. So instead of these types of costs being a dead cost on the business, we encourage the food manufacturers to think about how they can expand their thoughts of what this technology is to provide some really significant business improvements. And with the volumes of food that these types of manufacturing facilities are producing, even a small incremental improvement in a throughput or a giveaway or a yield or a consistency because of the volumes that they're producing can have significant financial impacts and drive the ROI. One of the things that we have learned long ago, one of the lessons that we learned that we like to talk about is really driving, getting input from across the organization and driving a project from different aspects of the organization. Historically, we've seen that technology manufacturing systems are driven by either production people like plant managers or production managers or IT folks, because there are a lot of technology, and IT is usually the department in an organization that gets tasked with bringing in technology and automation. But really, if food manufacturers can really take a cross-organizational look and get inputs from all sorts of departments from within the organization and get the support of what that departments want to see out of a solution, then there's a lot higher chances of success when you're implementing that technology. A successful implementation is going to be embraced by many different stakeholders, and the more input they have about what they want to achieve in the system, the more they'll be committed to seeing that project through and supporting it through. Tying that input back to what the value is that those different departments can see from a system is very important as well, because if some of these departments aren't seeing any value, then their support of it and their continued investment into a technology initiative could be a waning system if they're not providing value. But for example, going back to our compliance, most food manufacturers are rank compliance very, very high on their list, because if they aren't compliant, then there's either heavy fines coming their way or even worse, they can get their facility shut down. So there's a very, very high value attached to compliance. But if we can encourage our food manufacturers to really attach other high value metrics to that from different departments across the organization, then chances are that the organization is going to continue that support. And once the system starts to deliver that value, then that's when it's going to start being accepted and getting into that acceptance phase once it's been implemented. And that's when you're on the track to a good, solid technology project. One of the things that we spend a lot of time thinking about and talking about and kicking around is understanding and defining the difference between data and information. So I've pulled a couple of dictionary definitions, and data being the facts and statistics collected together for reference or analysis, whereas information is facts provided or learned about something or someone. So we like to kind of come up with our own definition of the difference between data and information, with information being the analysis and manipulation of data to gain valuable insights into a given situation, and for food manufacturers, that's a food manufacturing situation. So data alone doesn't typically drive value, but when it's manipulated and combined with other sources of data and other factors going on within the organization, and if that combined data is put into context, then that's when you start generating insights into what's happening and how different initiatives can be actioned upon to drive value to the organization. So for example, if you think about a injection process, step in the process. So you've got some whole meat muscles and you need to be injected. The data that we have here might be the injection pickup percentage, but if you average that injection percentage the pickup percentage, and track it over time, you might find that if there's an upward trend in your injection percentage, that leads to a lower product quality scores after the cooking process. So that's that's isolating the difference between the data, which is the injection percentage pickup, and how that can be used and monitored and affecting later on in the process. Similarly, consider a situation where you've got catch weight, case weights. You've got product which is being packaged into cases of product. They're being weighed and labeled. If you were to convert your hourly production throughput across multiple production lines, you might identify that one line is less efficient than others, and it might be because it has older and less efficient production equipment. If you choose to use that information to invest in better equipment on that production line to bring that throughput up to the other lines, that could be a great way to use data and information to drive important metrics being throughput, pounds per labor hour, and things like that, to really isolate areas in a production facility where technology can really support. So again, the data is the raw numbers coming out of machines or being collected by operators and users. Information is analyzing and manipulating that information to really start seeing what's going on, and then to extract valuable insights from the information from the production systems. We also talk about or think about where some of the different sources of data are within that organization, within any particular organization. We've identified and highlighted some of them here. But what we find is sometimes some of these sources of information, some of these sources of data, are treated as isolated cases. Sometimes it's a case of the left hand not knowing what the right hand is doing. So for example, you could have production management and they might know about what their production throughput is. If they're not looking at that information in concert with the food safety and quality assurance guys or with the maintenance guys, then, and girls, guys and girls, then they might not be getting the best value out of that data that's being collected. And not only in terms of looking at that information together, but in integrating and sharing that information with, for example, a corporate ERP system, time and attendance systems, shipping information, and machine data can really start providing a comprehensive look at what's going on with across the entire organization. And again, putting that data and information, accurate data and accurate information, in the hands of the decision makers for the organization at the appropriate time can provide great value in advancing and benefiting that organization. On the machine data in the bottom left corner there, production equipment is typically manually operated, and setting up the machine settings and might be prone to errors. And machines have huge amounts of PLC data that is available inside the controls of the machine, but it's largely ignored. But if you can start tapping into some of this cross-organizational data sources, finding out what information is there, finding out what the most important information is to drive the business, and putting that information in the hands of the right people at the right time, that's when technology can be a really good enabler and can help companies really grow and evolve. So in talking about machine data, machine integration is really a hidden goldmine of production data in a food manufacturing facility. So as I said previously, production equipment is usually PLC controlled, and those PLCs are controlling all of the operations and the setup of the machine. And then typically those programs are embedded into the PLC controller, and an operator will come and select the program that's being run, and that'll set up the machine parameters and how long it runs for, and temperatures and speeds and all things like that. And sometimes the operator might be required to put in some production parameters, whether it's a total weight, batch weight, or picking a recipe or whatever else. That leaves the possibility of manual errors. And what we have sometimes seen in our travels through the food manufacturing facilities that we've been to is sometimes those machines can have old programs in them. And especially if you have multiple pieces of the same type of production equipment, sometimes keeping them up to date with all of the current recipes or manufacturing programs can be difficult to do. By not running them in the right operation, or the right information inside, or the right data inside of the right programs, then you might be producing lower quality product, or the wrong type of product altogether. So by integrating to production equipment, you can remove the manual errors, but that integration path allows you to tap in and access the real-time operating data that the machine is collecting in the PLC typically. So typically we see inside these PLCs there's hundreds, if not thousands, of different data points about the machine, including the temperature, the pressures, the weights, the speeds, the power consumption, the voltage levels. All of this information is available in the PLC. But if we can identify the most important data points that can be used by the right people across the organization and start monitoring and analyzing those data points, not the entire hundreds or thousands. We're not looking to provide overwhelming amount of data analysis here, but if we can really identify what those key data points are and start providing some real-time monitoring and analysis, then we can really start driving some improvements to yields, increasing efficiencies, minimizing maintenance downtime, minimizing any sort of machine downtime, from production starvation to any of the other reasons that can cause those machines to run. We can increase the throughput and effectiveness, and we can really drive up that product consistency. So, but what we see with a lot of the food manufacturers is that these types of machines are just installed in the facility, and they're connected up into all of the rest of the production processes, and they run beautifully, and they do a great job in manufacturing food, but nobody's really tying into or tapping into that data that's inside those machines. And there's so much value to be achieved from accessing and leveraging that data, that machine production equipment and machine down on the plant floor is a hidden gold mine of data. So we've been talking about data, and we've been talking about all this information that we can generate, and data we can get it from all different sources, and who's going to be looking at it. So what we wanted to talk about next is what metrics to watch. So you've got a lot of information being collected and analyzed and monitored. What are the ones that people should really be thinking about most when they're looking at implementing technology and leveraging technology in their manufacturing facilities? So we put at the top that specificity is vital, and you don't get to use the word specificity every day, but there it is. But what that is it's about appointing specific people to monitor specific metrics at specific times. And we use, from our cross-organizational input slide, we use the same icons here. Looking at on the left side, we've got the plant management and production folks, FS and QA folks, maintenance. On the right side, we've got finance, HR, and IT. So what we mean here is, and we've bulleted out some of the metrics that these types of users can be most interested in. But what we encourage our customers to do is don't leave it to chance and hope that the people that are supposed to be looking at these metrics are going to be looking at these metrics, but appoint specific people to monitor specific metrics at specific times. So, and make sure that the people are using the system and getting the value that you had aimed to get out of it. Make sure that that system is being used. Also, we encourage not to look at these metrics in isolation. So for example, in the top right groups there, the two top right groups, for the finance folks, we've got production pounds per labor hour. And then on the middle right, we've got production pounds per labor hour again for the HR folks. So certainly there's some value that can be gleaned from finance and HR independently looking at a production pounds per labor hour metric. But if you bring these two groups together and have them look at that same metric in greater and broader context for the organization, then you can start leveraging even higher levels of value. So it's not just a financial decision about making financial decisions about the organization, but then HR might have their input too. And even if production, the hard hat guys in the top left, they'd be very interested in production pounds per labor hour as well, but they might look at it from a different perspective. So by making decisions with many inputs from across a business, then you can really start getting the best value out of the data and information and metrics that technology can provide for you. So great. We know who we're looking to engage in the organization. We kind of have an idea of what we're looking to do. We know that everyone's got to work together to provide a lot of value. So how can we identify opportunities in a food manufacturing facility? So on the left side of this slide, we've put a very, very simplified production process. We receive raw materials and ingredients. The ingredients on the left side of the flow go to a spice room for storage. The raw materials go on the right side to the raw meats cooler. The ingredients are consumed into a brine mixture, which are injected into the whole mussels, off to massaging, packaging, and then warehousing and shipping. So that's a simplified, very oversimplified production process flow. But where are some areas that we could typically be looking for opportunities for leveraging technology to produce business value? If there are any areas of low yield, and especially later in the production processes, because of course, as your product gets later and deeper into the production process, more towards that finished good, that's when the value of the product starts going up. So if you're suffering from low yields, whether it's a packaging yield or a storage yield or a tumbling yield or whatever the yields are, then there are benchmark metrics that are available, and if your production processes aren't performing to those benchmark metrics, then that can be a great opportunity to look at yields. Labor input is a huge input for many food manufacturers. So if you're looking at any situations in your facilities where there's double or even triple handling of product, then that is usually an indicator where a technology solution can come in to eliminate the double and triple handling and not only provide labor savings, but also eliminate some of those opportunities for product loss or for product downgrading because of that extra additional handling. Going into the back office, if we see many food manufacturers that have people dedicated in the back office to sitting taking paper forms from the production floor and manually keying that information into a back office computer, whether it's Microsoft Excel spreadsheets or whether it's a corporate ERP system or a third-party system for data management and analysis. And you guys see this as SafetyChain too with your plant floor forms, saving the amount of time of having those that data being manually keyed into a back office system, and also eliminating the manual keying entries that are going to happen and that do happen by bringing in technology to automatically collect and store that information and share that information. Another great opportunity area, disconnected back office data sources. So again, we've got that data working in isolation and not being looked at as a holistic picture is another area of opportunity where you can start collecting data to a common data source and sharing and integrating that data to provide some of that informational insight. We have seen lots of product giveaway situations where product giveaway is many percentage points higher than where it needs to go, and customers are literally, food manufacturers are literally sending free product out the door with every case of product that they produce. High density storage locations with varying shelf life. So one of the necessary evils of working in the food manufacturing industry is product has shelf lives. and sometimes very short shelf lives, and you have to be very aware of product that's been sitting on the shelf and is either approaching an expiration date, approaching a best before date, approaching a ship by date. So having the visibility of that data and information, and again, putting it in the hands of the right people is so putting that in the hands of the right people might save that spoiled product from being taken out of coolers and holding areas, or even product being downgraded. And any production downtime or underutilization. So production downtime certainly isn't desirable. You want 100% production uptime. So any areas of product downtime could be because of those maintenance issues, potentially, could be because of product starvation issues, could be because of any number of issues. But not only do we look for production downtime, but we look for underutilization. So even if production is running, if you're running at only 85% of capabilities, then you're underperforming. And by increasing that 85 to 90 to 95 and to ideally 100% of that production capability, that's another area of opportunity that we see a lot. So these, and again, there's no one size fits all. Where do we start? How do we do this? What does it look like? Different manufacturing facilities for many, many different reasons. From sometimes it's the physical layout of a facility can introduce inefficiencies or ineffectiveness. Sometimes processes. Sometimes the product mix. Sometimes, so there's lots of different inputs onto that. But here are some of the most common ones that we see as we're making our travels around working with food manufacturers. In terms of, you've got your project isolated, you've got your project in mind, you've got the right people on board, you've got people buying in because you've isolated identified value, people are ready to look for it. How do you action what you're seeing from this information? You use SMART goals. And I won't take a lot of time on this because this is a pretty generic and non-proprietary approach here, but if you can set SMART goals in terms of being specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely, if you can put those constraints around a technology initiative, then that's certainly going to help deliver the expected results to the people who are expecting it, delivering value to the organization on a timeline that people are expecting and are willing to work towards. So a lot of what we talked about previously is a bunch of hand waving stuff and is kind of high level and things like that. So we thought we'd dig into some specific examples of what this could all look like. So we have 3 examples, data versus information versus opportunities and actions. So let's run through the first one. Our situation is that a customer requires you, the food manufacturer, to label cases of fixed weight finished products with a specific barcode format and standard. Okay. So that's the requirements that's driving the initiative, potentially. However, the data that we would collect would be the weights of labeled cases, and we're generating case labeling transactions that typically contain, the transactions include a production date, product code, net weight, unique serial number, maybe some additional information, station ID, operator ID, if you've tracked on the operator that's logged on. So this is all the data that is being collected from a technology system to meet this customer requirement. The information that you can glean from this particular technology would be that cases from one packaging machine are consistently heavy, or throughput from a different line is much lower than other lines, and some operators delete errant transactions more frequently than others. So how you can leverage this information into actionable information that can help improve and benefit the organization. You could create a program for equipment calibration outside of production hours. Let's get that production equipment operating at its peak form so we can eliminate those differences and those discrepancies and that ineffectiveness and inefficiency. You could enforce upper and lower case weight limits so that a case has to be within a certain band of acceptable weights before the system will accept the weight and print a label and generate that data transaction. So you're effectively limiting your giveaway. You can't have zero giveaway. It's relatively impossible to pack an exact weight case exactly at the right weight exactly all the time. So there has to be some giveaway with this production. But if you can limit that giveaway, then you can really deliver value. And if you can identify and remove bottlenecks and provide operator retraining on production processes or systems or other things that are going on in the facility, then you can really use a technology system to drive value to the business. So that's our first example where we're taking a specific situation that is driven by customer requirements or compliance, just like we talked about earlier, and taking it through the process of how are we going to generate data, how's that data going to be useful to us, and how can we use the insights that we glean from that information to drive improvements in the organization. So moving on to our second example. Our production situation is that you've got combos of raw materials are purchased from suppliers and received at a processing facility. Completely typical. Hopefully lots of our attendees are nodding their head in unison because that's their day-to-day life. The data that we could collect from such a production process and production situation would be check deliveries against what was purchased. Certainly you only want to make sure that you're getting what you ordered. You can log the truck and trailer quality information, test the product quality, whether it's through doing some tests on individual pieces or on the combos themselves, and you can weigh each combo as each one is unloaded. So that's the data that you can collect from this particular situation. The information that you might be able to glean from this is that one supplier is consistently shipping lighter combos. Another supplier's combos have excessive water, and a third supplier's have low quality specs. All of these, all of the learnings from the information that we have from the data collected from the situation are detrimental to the effectiveness and productivity of the food manufacturer that's receiving these combos. So if you've got light combos to start with, then you're potentially overpaying for a product that you're not getting, or your plant yields are suffering because you're not getting as much raw material input as you think you are. If you have excessive water, then you're not getting as much protein or as much meat material as you're paying for, and again, you're going to suffer with your yields and your throughput. And certainly if you have lower quality specifications on the product you're receiving, that's going to hurt the product quality and consistency as you're pushing it through your manufacturing processes. So some of the actions that can come from out of this information that we've got from this situation is that we can request suppliers to have regular scale check programs and require those suppliers to submit their documentation about what they're doing to keep their scale checks in place. If you have a way to only receive combos that are within a particular weight tolerance, so you might forgive a few pounds light because there might be a transportation shrinkage, but if you have tolerances on the receiving, or you only pay for those raw materials that are being received, or you could completely reject loads with lower quality specs. So these are some of the actions that can be taken from the information that is gleaned from the data that is collected from a situation that is being faced. So that's our second example. Again, it's a very loose example, as all three of our examples are pretty loose, but hopefully we're catching enough resonance with our attendees that they're kind of going, yep, we can imagine what that would look like, or we've been there, or maybe we are there. And our third example is you sell a wide variety of products with different packaging configurations to many different customers. Completely normal situation that I'm sure a lot of food manufacturers live day to day. The data that you collect is that you're tracking the manufacturing costs for each product, how much you ship to different customers, and what revenue you generate. Perfect, life's good. Some of the information that can be gleaned from that is that you notice that a small number of your products have high margins, but your overall margins are offset by other lower margin products that you make. And that you also notice from your information that lots of different packaging configurations cause a lot of changeover downtime. So whenever you're doing a packaging changeover, you've got to stop the line, you've got to change the film, you've got to change the rolls, you've got to reset the machine, and that creates production downtime, which is very costly. And that's what your information might show you. So some of the actions that you can take on the information is that you can negotiate higher prices on lower margin products to increase the margins, or if it's possible and practical, and it's not always possible and practical, but if it is possible and practical, then stop selling those items altogether. You might also streamline your packaging options, maybe not offering as many packaging options to some of your customers. And a third thing that could be taken out of this is that if you schedule like products together, then you can minimize the number of product changeovers. So if you require a complete line washdown if you're going across species from a ham product to a turkey product, or if you require a washdown if you're going to product that doesn't contain allergens to a product that does contain allergens. Sorry, vice versa. If you're going with a wash down from allergen-containing products to non-allergen-containing products, and you have to do a wash down, maybe rearrange your production schedule so that you're doing the non-allergen products first and then running the allergen products second to minimize that production downtime due to line wash down. So that's our third example, hopefully taking some of those hand-wavy concepts that we talked about in the earlier slides and putting them into some real context. But this is where technology and automation can really help companies drive those improvements to the organization. When we think about projects, we always take the idea of smart small and win big. We've seen over-ambitious starts to projects where it's a complete door-to-door solution and it's going to technologize the whole thing and it's going to be great and it's going to be wonderful. And we see that those are often, those types of projects often face the challenge of being accepted and getting a lot of traction early on. So our offering to food manufacturers is start small and win big. Start with a relatively small, tightly defined project with a shorter timeline and a high ROI. If technology is new to your organization, or if it's not widely used, or if it's not widely championed across your organization, there might take some time for the culture to shift a little bit to keep that, to make that technology important and to attach value to it and to attach urgency to it. So if you start with a small project that isn't overambitious, can be delivered relatively quickly and can show significant, tangible and measurable results, then that goes a long way to either extending or expanding or embarking on a different technology project. So once you've successfully entered the first one, then you can expand your scope and provide incremental value on the existing system, or you can go to another area of your production processes or your production facilities and say, here's a technology solution that would help us achieve these benefits in this other area of the facility. And how, so technology, automation, we talked about these great things. How is technology delivering value to organizations? One of the big things that we see is technology can help increase throughput. Okay, we have seen in our experience, companies have canceled entire plant expansions because they are able to leverage technology to remove bottlenecks from their existing manufacturing processes. So they have literally canceled $1 million plus spends on facility expansions by just looking at their production processes, existing production processes, identifying some of the bottlenecks that are causing some of the inefficiencies and some of the ineffectiveness, and by removing those by incorporating technology. A second value that we often see is improving quality and consistency by removing the human error, by tracking production and processes in real time, making adjustments as food is being manufactured instead of performing a post-mortem after a batch has been manufactured that doesn't meet quality standards, is so vital to be able to salvage and reclaim that product as it's being manufactured, instead of realizing after the fact that you just produced a batch of product that you can't sell, or that you have to sell at a reduced price by downgrading. Another great value that technology provides is to reduce labor costs. We have seen a technology invested facility produce similar product output as a sister facility with only 25% of the labor force. So think about that. They're providing the same amount of production output as one of the sister facilities in the same organization, but at only 25% of the labor force. Massive savings in their manufacturing costs, but in being in that facility, it was really, really weird to be in these massive production halls and you see the odd person walking around doing the odd job, where you're normally used to seeing lots of people around, with lots of hands-on involvement in the production processes. It was a beautiful thing to see, but it was quite weird and quite a contrast to what we're normally used to. But technology has the ability to produce significant labor costs savings. And one of the last benefits that we see that technology provides is improved decision makings. The best organizations and the most profitable organizations, they're not just good guessers, but they make the right decisions based on having accurate information available at the right time. and that's a great enabler for them, using technology to enable their organization to be great. So that's some of the benefits, not all the benefits, but those some of the main benefits that we see food manufacturers benefit from for the technology. And with that, that is the end of my slide deck that I've prepared for you guys. Thank you all for your time, and Brian, over to you.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Steve, and appreciate all the input. I got a bunch of notes here. We got some questions, so
For sure.
I think we've got enough time to dig in on a few things. But
Cool.
I really appreciate all the content that you shared. I think one of our goals of these sessions is always to make sure people can take away some ideas to implement in a practical manner in their own plants. And I think you've given us a lot of good things to be considering. In particular, you gave 8 ways to improve the yield and throughput, and that was really one of the big things we wanted to share today. But digging into some questions here. So one, and I think this is timely, before you kind of covered your start small, big win, or start small, win big part. Question about what areas of the plant typically are best to focus on first. So maybe that's an extension of your start small, win big, right? So where specifically do you see people start small that you would recommend?
Typically, our starting points are towards the back end of the manufacturing process, where the finished goods are. More than one time I've heard that the case labeling stations or case labeling lines in a manufacturing facility are the cash registers of the organization. Every time those stations produce a data transaction, weigh and label a case, that's a cash register going cha-ching, because that's a unit of inventory that you've just manufactured or finished the manufacturing on, that you're going to be selling. There's lots of areas of, and that's also the highest value that your product gets. It's not a WIP, it's not a raw material that you need to do a whole bunch of stuff to and add a whole bunch of ingredients and manufacture. It's not your WIP product in the middle that still has to be refined and still has to have additional manufacturing done to it. But that finished goods is typically the highest value product. It is the highest value product before you ship it. It's where the financial performance of your company is tied so closely to, and it's where great opportunities for throughput, pounds per labor hour, yields, giveaway, that's where all those opportunities are. So where to start? I would say look towards the back end of the process where your finished goods are, and chances are you'll see something worthwhile thinking about at that point in the process.
Okay, good. And this questions are, I think, would tie to the section you talked about, all the different sources of data. That's something we actually see a lot too.
Sure.
So the question, I guess, is more general, like, what do you do when you have, quote, too many sources of data?
It's a common situation, because I think even if the food manufacturer is aware of it or not, a lot of that equipment has that that data collection capability. So you're literally looking at islands upon islands upon islands of data that can be collected. I think the way to go, though, is to identify where that win is, whether it's labeling or whether it's a yield measurement or whether it's a throughput measurement, and then start looking at the data sources that are closest to that and the data that you need to collect to support that initiative. So if you're looking at, for example, a product quality and consistency, you might want to integrate to your tumblers and your massagers, because that's where a lot of your product quality and consistency is going to be built into the product. So dig into the PLCs that are controlling those and find out what their rotation speeds are, what their cycle times are, what their pressures and temperatures and all that information is, and go with the information that you think is most valuable straight away.
That's good. That's good. Just break it down in small, as it goes back to your old start small, right? So
absolutely. And I think that can be a tiered approach, where in the first phase you can go and collect 5 data points. Maybe you go collect temperature, pressure, speed, and whatever else. If you can get value out of that, and once you start seeing value out of that, monitoring and analyzing, then go a little bit deeper and pick up a pressure and a current to the motor or some additional data metrics, and start looking at what additional value that they can provide for you.
No, that's a good point. I remember hearing the phrase "data rich, information deprived," right?
Absolutely.
And I think we can all appreciate that. And I want to reiterate what you said too. I think one of the pitfalls of any type of technology improvement is that people get really excited and
Absolutely.
and they see the potential, and you want to solve that whole problem. So So I definitely understand this question about, we have too many sources of data and we want to
Absolutely.
fix it all. You don't have to. And
No,
also important to point out, this doesn't mean fewer bodies. It means you can use those you usually don't have enough bodies anyway. You can use them
absolutely.
in a better way, right?
Yeah,
Improve quality, and some of these other, put them in a
for
spot
some
to
people.
analyze data rather than fetching it. So,
Yeah, I think
um,
I think when it
yeah.
comes to the data collection, what data do you collect and where do you get it from? A senior production manager years ago said something that stuck with me through the years, and the question that he posed was, "Is the juice worth the squeeze?" So
There
what are
you
you getting
go.
out of it, and is it worth
Right,
the work that you're going to have to put
right,
into it to get out of it? So that's always
right.
been a governing thought that I've had: is the juice worth the squeeze? And sometimes you don't know, and it's an educated guess. But the more
Yeah,
educated that you can make that guess, the more likely you are to succeed.
yeah. No, good. I like that. Question about what are common things that you see? So I'm going to maybe reword, but it's I guess in general, when you're dealing with more of a mid-sized company with fewer resources,
Right.
what do you usually see as like the blockers? Because I'm sure everybody listening to this is like, oh, this would be awesome, but I know I'm gonna have a problem with finance or who. So is it
Yeah.
buy-in or is it the actual project implementation? Where do you see the problem in a mid-sized company with limited resources?
Um, I think the biggest challenge that those companies face is not properly scoping what the expectations of the project are, not properly
Hmm.
scoping what the timeline is, and not properly scoping when they expect to see those benefits. Sometimes, unfortunately, there's a bit of a longer tail on some of the benefits. You install
Hmm.
a technology solution, you have to make the spend, you have to pay all of the money up front because that's what your suppliers are looking for. But sometimes those operational improvements can take some time to get to. Um,
Hmm.
it could take weeks or a couple of months. So I think just having the patience and taking the time up front to say, here's the return on investment that we expect, and we understand we might have to wait 3 months to start seeing that. But we also understand what we expect to see and what the initial impressions of this look like when we start getting traction on this. Um, so the challenge that I see a lot is there's just that like it's setting expectations. I think is where it's
Yeah.
at, and if you can be really careful and really explicit in setting expectations, um,
Hmm.
then when it comes to delivering and starting to look at the values that this any technology investment is providing, then that's usually where the best way to approach it is.
That's a great answer. And I'll add one part to that from our
Please do.
experience,
Yeah.
that budget usually is not the issue. I think it's an
Hmm.
assumed issue. And I think because of all the ROI you explained, when they see what it can really do, when we're talking about operational type of benefits, whether it's throughput or yield or reducing waste and all those things you mentioned, that's the quick, easy part. I think you touched on really the key there. So don't assume that it's a no-go. I think it's just more about really properly getting everyone on the same page about why we're doing it and what's it really going to
Absolutely.
impact. So,
Yeah.
and
Absolutely. Setting those
and then the budget's
expectations.
there, right? If it can create a huge ROI like you're showing,
Yeah.
increasing the footprint without increasing the building, that's a good day. That's
Yeah.
something everyone wants to do.
And one of the things that
Yeah,
we've seen, if I can just throw another
yeah,
comment, one
yeah.
of the things that we've seen for across a lot of our customer base is they're saying we want to increase our throughput, we want to produce increase our production output. We just don't
Yeah,
want to hire more people to do it. So
yeah,
that's when they're looking to technology and going, okay, what can technology do for us? A lot
absolutely.
of the manufacturers are not in the most populated areas,
Hmm.
so workforce is often a challenge,
Yep.
and people take sick days when you least need it or expect it, and people have bad days, for whatever different reasons.
Right.
Machines don't have those, man. A well-maintained
Yeah.
machine just goes ka-chunk, ka-chunk, ka-chunk.
Yep. No, that is a good point. I'm going to finish up with this one, just kind of more curiosity as kind of a tech nerd myself.
Okay.
What do you see coming? Like, what are you most excited about when it comes to technology that you're seeing on the floor or hearing about coming in your circles? Is there anything to be thinking
Yeah.
about?
Yeah. We're really seeing a push for reducing the human elements by bringing in robots or by bringing in automation or production equipment and really making that part of the production processes where
Hmm.
previously the labor force has been doing that stuff, but
Yeah.
a lot of companies are really struggling with hiring and finding and keeping the right people.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, down on the plant floor, there might not be as much loyalty, um, to the organization as there is in the back office. So, you know, if a better offer comes up across town, then an employee can leave just like that.
Yeah.
So that's a struggle that a lot of our food manufacturer companies that we work with have had for many years. But a lot of them are starting to action that by saying, you know, we're going to bring in automation to do what humans have been doing in the past. It's scary, but it's exciting as well. So
Yeah.
that's what we're thinking is coming down the pipe. More of
It'll
that.
create new opportunities in other ways for sure. So that's great to hear. Well, thank you again, Steve, and we appreciate the time you put into this, and we're really pleased to have you as a partner and a resource. So I want to encourage everybody, if you have questions about any part of this presentation or specifically what they do over at Matrix, Steve has been kind enough to make himself available. We'll make sure his contact info is in our follow-up, so you can reach out to him and his team and find out more about what they're doing. And we'll also, again, I know some questions came in. Yes, we're going to get you a copy of the deck and a link to the recording as well. We, as a reminder, have a whole library of resources, other presentations just like this, packed full of good stuff. So if you go to our website under the resources page, you'll see white paper downloads and e-briefs and all kinds of good stuff, including our webinar replays and our whole video library. And if you're interested in learning more about how we can help, or those of our partners like Matrix, you can certainly reach out to us via phone or email and set up a consultation. And we're also in trade show season, so if you're going to be out and about, let us know. Steve and I and our teams will be all over the country in the coming months. So we'd love to meet you and learn about what you're working on in your facilities there. So with that, Steve, thank you again. Appreciate a wonderful presentation.
Thank you, Brian. Thanks for the opportunity, and thank you to Anne, who's sitting silently in the background making all this work. And thanks for all the attendees. We couldn't do it without you guys. So keep on manufacturing food, and we'll keep on doing what we can to help.
There you go. Well said. Thank you all for making some time, and hopefully we'll see you again next month. Take care.
Awesome. Thanks, Brian.